Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the First Time Buyer Show.
When it was 1% and 2%, it was fantastic.
So that's ideal for a first-time buyer.
And obviously that had the huge boom in terms of the market.
When you get property in your blood.
I don't know, it was a little bit difficult for us because we didn't really know what we wanted.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of the First Time Buyer Show, where we talk to estate agents, mortgage advisors, and many people in the professional industry, helping you buy your first home. Today, we're welcomed by Gary. Gary, how are we doing?
Very good, thank you very much,
Good
Peter.
stuff. Thank you very much for joining us, Gary. So just to introduce everyone, of course, if you want to let us know about yourself, where you work at the minute in time, how long you've been in the industry for, that'd be great.
So I work for Michael Moon in Crosby. Estate agent's been established for a very long time, since 1996. Personally, I've been in this for about 10 years. Very different background. Before that, I was a football coach, completely different.
Interesting, yeah.
I think a lot of people go into the estate agency and they're driven by sales and they got that corporate sort of philosophy to it.
Of course.
Myself being a football coach, it was very different and relaxed. So joined Michael Moon, obviously been going for a very long time, and yeah, it's all good.
Interesting. What age groups were you coaching? Was it the younger ones, or was it pushing up to under 16s, under 18s?
Well, it was the babies.
Was it? Yeah.
So
Difficult trying to organise them all, then I can imagine. Took up a lot of time.
yeah, so I had 4 to 9 year olds, so pre-contract.
Yes.
And then later on went on to do under 16s girls.
Okay,
And then
interesting.
realised they were better at football than me, which was good. At the same time, I had 4 development centres.
Okay.
So I was overseeing, in total, there was about 26 different coaches all together.
Yes. Okay.
And I loved it, yeah. Big Man City fan. Woo.
Amazing. They're not doing too good nowadays, are they? So, I mean, we won't go into that too much. We've got a few Liverpool fans here, but we won't go into that. And we've also got an Arsenal fan as well. So there's been a few rivalries.
Shocking.
Yeah, a few rivalries over the years. So in terms of, estate agents, where you work at the minute, whereabouts are you based?
Yeah, so predominantly in the Crosby area. So our main office is there. We've also got a lettings company in the city centre.
Interesting.
I'm pretty much Crosby, Blundell Sands, Waterloo, Brighton Le Sands as an area. But we do cover as far as got one in Orton, Southport, Ainsdale. We will go further afield, but you have to be cautious to not sort of stretch yourself too far.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Is that because focusing on that just area which you know best? Would you recommend that? Or?
Well, yeah, it's when it comes to obviously the valuing and the sales side, it's easy to just put it on Rightmove and see what happens. But if you don't know the area, you don't know the schools, the local clubs, the buyers know very quickly.
Yeah, 100%. Now, of course, this being the First Time Buyer Show, what our aim is to do is help people get on the property ladder. So before we start, what do you enjoy most about working with first-time buyers?
In the nicest possible way, they're naive.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with someone who's a property expert and they've moved 10 times,
Yes.
they know everything.
100%,
They know exactly what should be on a survey.
They don't want to listen to you, do they?
They don't listen to me.
Waste of time.
Whereas, a first-time buyer, they'll have some experience, but the best thing for them to do is just be honest and say, I don't understand, I don't know it. Go and seek the advice. So when you actually speak to them, they're excited. So one of the first questions I'll ask them, so if I'm on a viewing and I know it's a first-time buyer, I'll say, are you fed up of looking yet?
Yeah.
Because then you can almost find out very quickly, is this their very first viewing? And if it is, they're like little kids, they're super excited to go and see. Maybe they've gone and seen, 6 or 7 properties, they've had offers submitted and they've missed out. So you can see they're slightly
gutted.
Yeah, about the whole situation. So you have to explain. Obviously, it's normal. The dream one will come along. So yeah, I like working with first-time buyers. Yeah,
I think that's kind of it shows a lot. I'm sure I can imagine dealing with first-time buyers that they can put all their eggs in one basket almost and go with that first property they see and they fall in love with it and it falls through. Then they become very upset, don't they? So just have to explore. They need to speak to a good agent, get some advice off them.
Oh, completely. Yeah. It's very easy to be a first-time buyer. You go and speak to your mortgage advisor and say, oh, you can borrow a certain amount. And then they start looking and then the dream house comes up. Yeah. And then they realise it's that good, 5 other people have offered on it. And then they lose heart and get sort of dejected about it all.
Of course.
So it's almost putting them in the place and saying, make sure everything's correct, the right one will arrive.
Absolutely. And in terms of talking as well about, putting all your eggs in one basket with that one house, what is the biggest mistake that you see the first time buyers make and who you deal with in the industry? What's the biggest mistake?
Not being prepared.
Okay.
First time buyers coming along and maybe they've done well, they've saved for their ISA.
Yeah.
They've got their deposit in place. And I'll say, so do you have your AIP, your mortgage and principal in place? No. Okay, well there's your first step. You don't actually know what your finances are. You don't know what your affordability is.
Yeah.
So anyone viewing a property and they don't have their finances in place, essentially they're wasting their own time.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's that many first time buyers that are prepared.
Yes.
That they'll see the property, they'll love it, and someone else is going to get it because they're steps ahead of them on their preparation of it.
Yeah, so they've been organised inevitably.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got organised.
There's a lot you need to put in place from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they're too excited. Oh, I'll finally save my 15 grand or whatever it is. I want to buy.
Yeah.
Well, no, go and speak to a professional and step by step.
Yes. Yeah. We'll go into that more, especially later on in this episode, about what the first time buyers need when they're purchasing the first property. We'll touch that. But starting off, how do you see the current state of the UK market at the minute in time? Are the prices at an all-time high? Are they going to drop? How would you see it at the minute in time?
Yeah, the market's strong.
Yeah.
I'd say there's probably more buy demand at the moment.
Of course, yeah.
A lot of that comes down to sort of the post-COVID craziness, where
Absolutely.
house prices went through the roof, interest rates were incredibly low. That had a big knock-on effect. Our market at the moment, so particularly now, so we're high season, so March to summer holidays is peak season for us. Anything that comes on, you're going to get multiple viewings, multiple offers on it. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But I would say buyers are allowed to be cheeky again. You can almost offer a little bit below again, whereas 22, 23, you couldn't.
Yeah. It was relentless, wasn't it? It was relentless.
Yeah, you know yourself.
Yeah, it was relentless.
It wasn't a case of you'd put a property on the market and maybe it's a couple of weeks, a couple of months and it gets sold. No, it's literally the day of viewings, you block them and it's gone.
Yeah.
That's not how the market is anymore, which is a shame because it was fun.
Well, yeah, it was almost like a property went on sale for 240, and then they probably get a call in 5 minutes when the property's gone on Rightmove, and it's take £270,000, take the property off the market, done, let's get it through ASAP. So that's kind of not the situation now, is it anymore? No. So you can kind of offer below asking potentially and look around that. Yeah,
what I'd say in terms of that, it depends on how long the property's been on.
Yeah.
So, prime example, if a two-bedroom semi-detached comes up in the centre of Crosby and is correctly valued, that, and it got listed today, for instance, it's going to have 10, 15 viewings booked for the weekend.
Interesting.
That kind of property, you go and view it, and you could potentially offer less, but the likelihood it's not going to go for less.
No.
If it's the sort of higher end of the market that we deal with, maybe we're 800 grand plus.
Okay.
There's fewer buyers for that kind of property, and they're almost expecting an offer.
Okay.
Same again, sort of 5-10%. But if you're a first-time buyer and you've seen a house and it's been on the market since January, and maybe they've just done a reduction on it.
Yes.
Don't be alarmed thinking, well, it's reduced, I can't go less again.
No.
No, clearly the buyers got intent to sell it because they've bothered to do the reduction.
Of course.
So be a bit cheeky and a little bit under. They can only say no.
Yeah. 100%. And then in terms of what you mentioned, then you're going to get 10, 15 viewings. When a property goes in the market with your branch, is there a waiting list of people? Let's say, for example, a £200,000 property goes in the market. Do you send out an email to them straight away and give them a call and say, there's a property in your price range here, do you want to book a viewing in? Yeah,
so they automatically get the brochures sent out on that side. What we prefer to do at Michael Moon is not just email, because it's, you might open it, you might not.
Yeah, exactly.
Pick up the phone and ring them.
Yeah.
So we're very good at selling prior to listing.
Okay.
So I was literally doing it before I came here.
Yeah.
Went to a property, valued it last week, really nice. And then the whole time I'm going, all right, who's going to work for that one?
Yes.
So you've got your database, but this is for the hot buyers. This is proceedable.
Yeah.
Your first time buyers, your cash buyers, your under offers. The idea is if we're going to show you something prior to marketing, you need to be able to offer on it straight away, because it'll go onto the open market and then it'll be sort of an influx. So you try and look after your own applicants as much as you can.
Of Of course. And you're saying there they need to be ready straight away as soon as it's on the market. They've not really got time for delays.
Yeah, completely. You know,
of course.
It tends to be. On a selfish note, I look after my vendors a lot.
Absolutely, as you have to. It's your job, isn't it?
So that's exactly what I was doing before I came here.
Yeah.
We've sold this property, lovely couple with children wanting to upsize. So every time I'm going to a 4-bedroom house in their budget, I'm always going, I wonder. So I did one today. I've called them and they're going to view it tomorrow. So
interesting.
Fingers crossed they might make an offer, which means it wasn't exposed to the market. They're going to get true value anyway.
Yeah.
And it tends to be if we're listing, if we're arranging a viewing prior to listing, you almost pitch slightly higher again because you're almost saying it's a luxury that you're getting to see this before it goes on.
Of course, yeah.
But the only way you're going to find that out is by contacting local agents. A lot of the time, especially if you're a first-time buyer, if you're waiting for stuff to go on Rightmove, you've missed out on a lot.
Yeah.
You have to build that relationship.
Absolutely. So would that mean then just ringing all the local agents in the area and asking to be on the waiting list potentially for a property in a certain time frame?
Yeah, obviously sort of time constraints is difficult.
Yeah.
If you've got a chance, go in and speak to them.
Yes.
You're so much more likely to remember someone's face or the conversation that you had rather than, because how many times do you have to answer the phone as a negotiator?
100%, yeah.
We've got one that's completing on Friday. Lovely couple.
Yeah.
And the man comes in maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
We all know who he is.
Yeah.
So if that hadn't been the case, and he hadn't found his property, well, great, we would have found something because we like him.
Absolutely.
So it's you're always going to try and look after your customers. Don't get me wrong, but it's the ones that you build that relationship with, and you remember who they are and the kids' names and football teams they like, and that side. It
Absolutely.
helps.
Yeah, and the way how they respect you as well for going above and beyond with them, it helps massively. It's the same with my clients when I'm dealing with them. You build a personal relationship with them and you want them to get the keys as soon as possible. So I'm sure you're in the exact same position as that, aren't you?
No, completely. Well, on a selfish note, we get paid on completion.
Exactly. So, exactly.
This sort of myth that estate agents try and slow stuff down and solicitors try and slow stuff down. Well, it's not the case. If you're a first-time buyer and you've got everything in place, we are desperate to give you the keys.
Absolutely.
So everything we can do to help in the meantime is fantastic.
Absolutely. And I mean, another question I've asked estate agents as well is, you're saying about people coming in and them standing out. Do they need to be wearing a suit?
No.
Can they wear a tracksuit? What would you recommend? Is it just they can just roll in and just be nice and polite and?
What I've learned from doing this is you can't judge someone by their appearance.
Of course, yeah.
I've met the fancy dress, lovely suit.
Yeah.
Without a penny to their name. And at the same time, some of the richest people I've met.
Yeah.
You'd never know.
100%.
Driving a Volvo, 20 years old.
Yeah, of
rough
course.
jeans.
Yeah.
So I'd say not necessarily how you look, but the conversations and how memorable you can be.
Of course.
You want to come in and whatever estate agent you're speaking to, be polite and build that relationship. That's more important than appearance.
Yeah.
You want them to remember you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the 3rd time you've heard it now where you don't need to wear a suit going to an estate agent. So do not worry. No suit needs to be worn at all. Now, in terms of the market as well at the minute in time, do you think the current interest rates at a high, going around that 5.5 mark, slowly dropping down, are impacting the market at the minute in time or not? If them rates going to come down slowly, will the house prices go up more?
Potentially. The interest rates have been all over the place. When it was 1% and 2%, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And obviously that had the huge boom in terms of the market. Then it was almost pushing 6% as an average.
Yes.
When it got to that point, the market started to come down. And it's not necessarily that house prices have dropped. Because if you actually look, especially in the L23 area that I'm looking at, it's almost seen a 10% increase year on year.
Okay.
And Liverpool as a region still just under 1%. But the buyers are now allowed to offer again. So that's having an impact.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes down to, if you're going to your lender and they're saying it's 5.5% as an average, well, that's not the important thing. It's your monthly payment. So if they're looking and going, okay, well, I want to buy a £250,000 house, and you say it's on a 5.5%, so I've got my deposit. Can I afford that monthly payment? Now, I always say to my first-time buyers or upsizers, whoever it is, work backwards. Don't worry about what your affordability is. if your lender's saying you can borrow 400 grand, I know, but does that stop you going on holiday? Does that stop you buying presents for the kids? If it does, realistically bring it down to
100%.
go, well, I'm comfortable paying £1,000 a month. Now tell me what my affordability is. So that's had an impact. But the market is still strong. Interest rates are constantly going to go up. They're not going to go down to the 1% and 2% anytime soon.
Yeah.
But the different brokers, the different lenders that we speak to, it's potentially going to come down where you can get into the 4s consistently. But that's only a positive for ourselves. But it's not going to see a big spike again.
No. I mean, look, if you're looking back 20, 30 years when people I've spoken to, they're saying, you're lucky that your interest rates are 4.5, 5 at the minute in time, because, years ago they were 20.5 and above. But I mean, look, we can also say the house prices were a lot cheaper back then. So
I did a presentation for the staff in work. So I was trying to explain to them the difference between purchasing the average house in 1996 compared to last year when I did it.
Yeah.
And your salary coming in, the average house price, it had worked out it was 4 times your salary, which is what lots of people were used to.
Of course.
And I said the same equivalent now is 14 times your salary. So it's all well and good saying, but we paid 15% on art. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
But the house price reflected your income.
Absolutely.
Now if you need 14 times to get the basic property, then that's a huge difference.
This is why it's so tricky, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah.
So tricky getting on a ladder. And in terms of that as well, what would you say one of the biggest disadvantages you can see for someone who's a first-time buyer in the current market at the minute in time? Is it the increase in mortgage rates? Is it the competition out there? What would you say it is?
Yeah, I'd say there is a lot of competition. First-time buyers are very common. We deal a lot with first-time buyers, but they're still in a really strong position. The only people that are going to essentially beat them are cash buyers.
Absolutely.
But, you'll have seen at the moment, cash buyers are almost holding off a little bit. Yeah. Because the buy-to-let market and that side's really slowed down.
Yes.
Obviously, with the increased interest rates on that side. I don't think there's a major disadvantage for first-time buyers because you're always going to be more desirable than someone in a chain. If someone's selling a property and they need to downsize and there's all this chain that's involved, well, the first-time buyer is going to beat it.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's not easy for first-time buyers.
No.
But at the same time, they're still buying every single week from us, which is good. Absolutely.
And, would you recommend them to potentially look at properties that are chain-free or in a chain? Does it really matter
Not
at all
really.
or not? No.
I mean...
Do you think people get too caught up in that usually?
Yeah. Perfect example. So, listed a property over the weekend. They had 7 viewings. They've got an offer. They're happy to accept.
Yeah.
When I originally went to do the valuation with them, they said they're going to move out and go into rented because they don't want a chain.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if that's your preference, if that's what you want to do. I said, if anything, it makes your house more desirable because now we've stopped. That's the end of the chain. So if you sell to a first-time buyer, it's really simple.
Yeah.
Then I went back to go and do the take-on with them. And I said, why don't you want to change? We know you want to buy. You want to upsize on the property.
Yeah.
What's scaring you? And I said, it's incredibly normal for a property to have 1 or 2 properties or 3 or 4, whatever, in the chain.
Absolutely.
So obviously they've now took my advice and they are looking. So ideally, if they can find an empty property, well, then we've got a two sort of property chain. But I said, but at the same time, if your dream house comes up, all that happens is it's just maybe a month or 2 later that you get the keys.
So don't let that affect you.
No, not at all, no.
Of course. And obviously touching before as well, what you mentioned about, a first-time buyer approaching yourself with certain documents. How important is a mortgage in principle?
For us, very important. Okay. Essentially, it shows that you're committed. You at least had the conversation with someone. It's very easy to go online, go to one of the big lenders, fill in your information, and they get a rough guide. Yeah. The difference, what we need is we not necessarily ours. Speak to any financial advisor. They go through your. They'll send like a soft credit check. They'll look through your finances, your income and your outgoings. So it's not just a case of going, all right, this is our combined salary. We've been on the Halifax and it says this is what we can borrow. Well, actually, you need to get that verified. How many loans have you got, your credit history, all that side of it. So by the time you go through all those checks and you get your AIP, your mortgage in principle, we know actually you can submit this for a mortgage offer.
Of course.
So I'd say up until that point, treat it as all just information hunting, you know, looking at houses, looking at areas, but don't presume you're going to get that one.
No.
Yeah. When it gets to the point where someone wants to offer on ours, it's the first thing we ask, first time
Mortgage in
buyers.
principle straight
Where's
away.
your mortgage in principle?
Yeah.
We need your deposit, 3 months worth of bank statements, your identification. There's a basic checklist. Now, if you don't provide that information and it's on a property that's had a lot of interest in it, well, the other 4 people that have offered and have submitted all that information, well, they're the ones going to negotiate.
And they just go to the back of the list.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Up until that point, it's a provisional offer.
Yeah.
So if we've got 4 formal offers and we can verify the finances, well, then you're gone. In the nice possible sense, you're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of what you're saying there as well, what are the checklists that you carry out? Is it the proof of deposit, the mortgage in principle? Is there anything else as well, really, or not?
Identification. So passport, driving license is ideal for proof of name and proof of address. Utility bill can be used. You can also use CREDAS. I don't know if you use CREDAS.
Absolutely, I used that before, of course. Yeah.
Which is used for people that don't have identification. So then the government can do their searches on it.
Yeah.
We send out it's called a declaration of offer. Now it's very unique to Michael Moon.
Yeah.
I'd never done it before. The sort of principle of it is we want everything in writing.
Absolutely.
So who your solicitor is, who your mortgage advisor is, what you intend to do with the property, as much information.
That's really
as we
interesting.
can.
I've not heard of that before.
Well, again, it shows commitment because you have to fill this paperwork in and then send me all your documents. So I know I can get this. So the team in the office, the negotiators, they'll get all this information and I'll read through it, and then I'll get to the point where I go, okay, great. They're committed. We can treat this as a formal offer. So you have the conversations with the owner beforehand, saying, "Oh, this couple loves it. They want to offer you this. Just give me some time to just check their finances."
Absolutely.
Now, if they don't provide that information, well, I'm really sorry, but you're not going to offer.
Yeah, of course. Then going on to the property viewing, of course. So you know, you can imagine you took a lot of first-time buyers around, looking at the first property which they're interested in. We did touch about it before. You know, where you asked them a few times. You know, are you bored yet?
Yeah.
What would you say, giving advice to first-time buyers, is, you know, what are the red flags? What should they look for and what shouldn't they look for?
Yeah, don't get super excited because it's got a kitchen island or something. That's all they care about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Kitchen island, media walls.
Oh, it's got bifolds. Love it.
Yeah.
No, the sensible things to look for: electric, central heating, how old the boiler is.
Yeah.
These are the things that are going to have a financial impact on you. If it's had extensions, loft extension, single story extension, ask the estate agent, ask the owner if they're doing it. When was this done? Do we have building regulations for it?
Yes.
These are all the sensible things. Now, you know, first-time buyers are very guilty of going along, being so excited, walking around, not asking enough questions, and then leaving.
Yeah.
So that's not going to help anyone. Okay. And then they'll make the mistake. Well, maybe not the mistake. They'll if they get the chance, they'll do a second viewing, and maybe they'll bring the parents.
Yeah.
And the parents will ask all those questions, and that's fantastic. But there's a lot of properties you're not going to get a chance to do a second viewing. So don't be afraid.
Snapped up quick.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Ask the estate agent. Like I was saying to you before, the checklist for viewings that we work off on. You know, we should be able to tell you: is it freehold? Is it leasehold?
Yes.
The council tax band. You know, the floor plan or the room size. All this is important information.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that they can do. We've had it where it's the extreme with some first-time buyers, and they bring the brochure.
Yeah.
And they're making notes on it as they're going around.
Yes.
Now, I'd rather that than someone walks around, hands in the pocket, not saying a word, and they leave, and then the following morning you call for feedback. Oh yeah, I really like it. I want to. Well, you know, you've not done enough research. Are you sure? So as an estate agent, what I can say and going, do they really want this? Even if we get an offer accepted, they're going to pull out if someone else comes on that's better. So yeah, definitely ask as many questions as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's something I said as well. I asked someone previously, you know, should they carry around the notebook and have a list of questions? Does that appeal to you when someone does that? Because it shows that they're serious.
Yeah. I definitely like it on the valuation side. Yeah. Because I'll obviously explain the value of the property, how the market is on that side, And then at the very end, I'll always say, so do you have any questions for myself? And I love it, the ones that bring the paperwork out.
Yeah.
Because usually I'm going, all right, teacher, accountant, you can kind of work out what the profession is. And it's the same idea with someone doing the viewings. If they pull their notebook out and they've got 10 questions, fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I know if you like this property and you submit an offer, when I ask for my information, my declaration and all my proof of funds, more than likely I'm going to get it back straight away because you're efficient.
Yes.
So yeah,
absolutely.
that's not a problem, yeah. Because you're not going to, you can't walk around a house and remember everything. We would, because this is what we do for an industry. But a first time buyer won't go, oh, has the boiler been serviced?
Yeah.
All the windows done. What's the warranty? Was it 2 years? You're not going to remember all this information.
Absolutely.
So write it down and ask them.
Sometimes first-time buyers as well learn the hard way. The boiler's not been serviced. They get there, the electrics, they've not checked the electrics, and it's their responsibility as well.
Yeah.
So they can learn the hard way, and they've got to pay money once it's completed and the property's officially there. So it is so important, this, isn't it?
Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of information that you can gather once you've had an offer accepted. Going through this list,
of course.
raising the inquiries, going back and doing second viewings, and asking all this information. But you don't want to get to the point where you've had an offer accepted. Maybe you've paid money and you've got your survey, so you're financially invested into this, and then you find out this information and realise, oh, it's not for me. You're just wasting money.
Yeah. So find it straight away.
As much as you can on those first couple of, that first viewing, really.
In terms of, as a whole, what you're mentioning there of, viewing the property and asking these questions, you mentioned that properties do get snapped up very quick. So would you recommend a first-time buyer to make multiple viewings of the property or not? Should they maybe have 2 max, 3? How many viewings do you reckon they should have?
You're not going to get a chance.
No, you're not going to have a chance.
Well, obviously it's different in different areas and that side. The patch that I'm working in, it's rare that you get the opportunity to do a second viewing.
Yeah.
So you need to ask as much information as you can on that first viewing. If you get the chance to do a second viewing, you're doing well.
Yeah.
I'd say most of the moment, you do the first viewing, you've got to the point where you've had an offer accepted, and then they'll call the next day saying, oh, can I show my mum and dad? Or, can I show my kids, can they see it? Whatever. That's when you're doing it, but you're almost, you're committed now. We've sent the memorandum of sale out. I'd say if interest rates continue and they went high, and then obviously buyer demand maybe slightly drop off, then you'll get more of an opportunity to actually do second viewings.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, it was normal. It was a normal market. You'd go and view a property on the Monday, you'd speak to the agent the following day, and you go, I really like it. Can I go and see it at the weekend? Yeah, of course you can. You go and view it on the Saturday, and you go from there. The market since COVID has just kept going. You can't really.
No. So you got to move quick.
Yeah. If you like it, you need to be prepared and go for it straight away.
Absolutely. And you touched on something there about the memorandum of sale. So first time buyers put the offer in, it's accepted. And survey results shows that 48% of first time buyers don't know what a conveyancer or solicitor is. What happens when you tell them once they put the offer in? Did you explain to them what the next steps are, and are they very surprised by finding out of it?
Yeah. As part of that's why on our declaration of offer form we ask, who's your conveyancing solicitor?
Yes.
Now, when we send the document out, we say to them, there may be parts you don't understand. Maybe you don't have a solicitor. Well, that's fine, yeah? So we'll recommend solicitors. We'll explain the basics of what your conveyancing solicitor is going to do to them. Because a lot of people don't understand. If you're going to a big corporate solicitor, vast majority of the time you're dealing with assistants. It's the fee earner that's the solicitor, and they'll sign everything off.
Of course.
But they're not the ones doing the day-to-day work.
Yeah.
So I'd say most first-time buyers are a bit more clued up now. They do some research.
Yeah.
They've got someone in mind. What I would say is don't necessarily just go with the solicitor that your mum and dad used 20 years ago. Do your own research.
Yeah.
Trustpilot, the Google reviews are so important. And don't be afraid to go out and get comparable sort of, prices and values. But it's the same with estate agents. We're not the cheapest. We understand that. And it's the same with the solicitors. don't go for the cheapest option.
No.
Go for the one who's actually got a really good conversion rate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And would you always recommend them as well, touching on that? Check Google reviews, check Trustpilot reviews. Is that what you'd always say to them? Because, I mean, I even say to, potential clients who approach me, I say, look, my fees aren't the cheapest, but whoever you go with, make sure you check the Google reviews and the Trustpilot reviews prior to choosing. So is that something you recommend as well?
Well, it's part of it. So a lot of people will make the effort to say bad reviews potentially. If an experience hasn't gone very well, they'll go on Google and they'll write their little rant or whatever it is. I wish everyone that had a really good experience wrote a review.
Yes.
They don't.
No.
So I'd say, take the reviews with a pinch of salt. Read through. If it's consistent, there's more good than bad. Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then just don't be afraid to ring them up and ask them questions. Even if you're not in a position where you're ready. So say you're a first-time buyer and you're just gathering the information. You got, spoke to the financial advisor. Well, go and call some different solicitors.
Of course.
I don't know how it would work in your industry if you can pop in and have a sit down and a chat with them. But it certainly helps because you can tell very quickly if someone's not going to look after you.
Absolutely, 100%. And in terms as well of, potential delays, what would you tell them usually if they've just bought the property? Would you say, the searches can usually take a certain amount of time because, it can kind of go quiet for a little bit once the file's first open, can't it?
Yeah. So I tell everyone, all first-time buyers, vendors, anyone, conveyancing is not quick.
No.
I wish you would be quick, to be fair.
I'm quick. Some other people aren't.
Good. Like you. In general, you almost have big bursts of activity on a property.
Yeah.
The memorandum of sale gets sent out. They'll pay for their searches if that's what they're doing. They get applied for. The mortgage offer goes in. Lots and lots of stuff happens in that first week, 2 weeks, or whatever it may be. And then you've got a lull.
Yes.
So we'll
limbo almost. Yeah.
Where you're waiting for your survey to come back. Maybe that's going to be a week.
Yeah.
Maybe some inquiries have been raised, but you've got to wait for answers. And it's the same for every single sale. You'll get to the point where you're looking and go, nothing's happened, but it's normal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You could have 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks sometimes where on paper, the whole property process is stalled, but it hasn't.
No.
You're just gathering the information. The final searches have come back.
Yes.
Inquiries are being answered and raised, but they don't necessarily need the buyer or the vendor too much involved. They've answered the paperwork and it's just the solicitors to go on.
Absolutely.
And there's other cases where it's that busy, it's peak season, and unfortunately your property just has to wait a little bit. It has to wait for its turn for the conveyancing to continue. But
of course.
I'd always say that the best tip for first-time buyers is sort of be present with your solicitor.
Absolutely, I'd recommend that too. I'd always say just minimum even, if you're dealing with a solicitor or conveyancer who's not proactive, just give them a call once a week minimum.
Yeah.
Pop them an email, stay on top of them. I've always recommend that to them.
Yeah. I probably annoy you because I tell everyone, okay, ring Peter on the Monday. Have a conversation. How did the weekend go?
Yeah. Is that why all your clients always are asking, what did you get up to this weekend?
So don't even talk about your property, and all I'm asking them to do is to just make contact on the Monday.
Yes.
And then the idea is you'll say to them, so what's the plan for the week?
Yeah.
And then on the Thursday, sometimes on the midweek, Wednesday, Thursday, call your solicitor again, and it's a recap. Oh, hi, we spoke on Monday, just wondering what's happened since Monday. And it's always polite, it's never forced, it's never aggressive, because if you start down that tone, it won't work.
Absolutely.
Now, if they expect your call on a Monday and a Thursday, don't call Friday. Friday's a busy day.
Stay away.
Yeah. If they expect your call on a Monday and a Thursday, and every time you call, you're always really nice and happy and polite, lo and behold, it goes through quicker. Now, if everyone does that, fantastic.
Yeah.
Not you, because you're good.
Thank you.
Some solicitors, if they're not being pressured, they'll put their file to the side and go,
Absolutely.
okay, well, this couple are constantly having to go. They're always emailing me. I need to get their file through, and they concentrate on that one.
Yes. Now,
you can have the same impact with that solicitor, but by being polite. So yeah, that's why everyone pesters you. So
yeah. No, it's fine, don't worry, I don't mind at all. So I mean, that's probably the best way to put it as well, kind of, you know, dealing with your solicitor and conveyancer and speaking to them on the Monday, you know, what is the plan of action for this week? Where am I up to? Can I arrange a call back on a certain date, you know, Thursday, and we can touch base and see where we progress, where we've got up to when the searches are due back. I'd 100% recommend that to first time buyers. You know, don't be afraid to speak to your conveyancer or solicitor and put parameters in place. You know, we are here to help you. So it's something I'd recommend, what Gary's just said there.
completion days are great.
Yes.
Love them. They can happen at any time on that day. You know, yeah, you know, right the way up till the end of the day, which is they're the fun ones. So annoyingly, we have no control over this. This is all your domain.
Absolutely.
So depends on what they're doing. I'd say most of the moment are exchanging prior, and then we have a completion a couple of days later or a week later, depending on what they need to do. Not seeing as much simultaneous exchange and completion. No. On completion day, so we'll call them in the morning just to let you know it's the big day, you're all excited, they got the removals ready, so we got that first chat with them. And then we explain, we will receive a phone call from the solicitor saying money has been transferred and we can release the keys.
Yes.
Up until that point, we can't give them.
No.
Now, we've had people go, oh, but I just want to put some stuff in the house. No, because you don't own that property. And we've had it in the past where vendors have gone, oh, it's fine. And I was like, no. It's 99% gonna go through. But if there is a problem and something happens, we can't be liable for the fact that you've got stuff there or you've moved into a hotel because there's been issues. But we'll receive the phone call, and then we call the first time buyers and say, come and collect the keys.
Amazing.
Give them a big bottle of champagne and hopefully get a Google review.
Lovely. Big fancy bottle of champagne.
Yeah.
So, final bit of advice. Golden rule for first time buyers, all out there listening. Fire away.
Be prepared.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing. It's very, very simple to get excited about everything and not be, I'd say more prepared, more financially prepared.
Yes.
Most important thing as a first time buyer is that mortgage in principle.
Yeah. Okay.
The second you've got that, you know that you can afford to buy a property. And then after that, ask solicitors, ask estate agents, you know, get as much information as you can, ask family and friends.
Yeah.
As first time buyers, you don't know enough. So you need to ask as many different people that do know and take that information and then enjoy.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, thank you, Gary, for joining us. Absolutely great episode. Where can everyone find you? You've got social media, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, well, yeah, everywhere, and we're getting better. So yeah, you can find us, Michael Moon in Crosby. Yeah. That's our main office. We're on Facebook, Instagram,
Nice.
and yeah, I think that's it. All socials, our website as well. Yeah,
Perfect.
pop in and see us.
Amazing. Thank you very much again, Gary. Thank you very much for joining us on episode 5 of the First Time Buyer Show, where we speak to estate agents, mortgage advisors, and ask them many questions where we can help you get on the property ladder. Get ready for series 2, be coming up shortly. Leave your comments below, the questions that you want me to ask the professionals. Fire away.